Hi, hello, how you doing? My name is Mariana, but you can call me Mari. Welcome or welcome back to my channel. So today I wanted to give you some tips on how to read more. Last year I read 70 books, and though that is not a lot in booktube standards, for me it was an achievement. And I did this by following different ideas and tips in order to make some time for reading. I do get the question a lot on how do I read so much, or how do I implement reading into my very busy schedule and life. I'm a very active person, I'm always doing things, so I always have to prioritize reading in order to read the certain amount of books that I want to read by the end of the year. This year I set myself a goal of reading 100 books, and so I'm also following these tips in order to actually achieve that goal. So let me begin by mentioning my 6th tip, which is to bring a book everywhere you go. And exactly how it sounds, literally everywhere you go. So if you go to a concert, if you go to university, if you go to work, if you go to meet a friend, whatever you're doing, it's always good to have a book with you in case you need it. Imagine you're, at a friend's house, you're having a great time, you're focusing your time on that friend, but they have to go to the bathroom for a long time. Instead of pulling out your phone and doing other things, you can pull out a book and read meanwhile they're doing other things. Or if they have to, do a chore or whatever, you have something to do instead of, again, looking at your phone. If you're going on a metro or taking the bus, that is perfect time for reading. Commuting to places gives you enough time to open a book, read. If you have motion sickness, I have another tip for you. The 5th tip I have for you, which is to listen to audiobooks. Audiobooks have made it so much easier for me to do other things while reading, because sometimes I don't have time to just sit down and read a physical book. So I'll put on an audiobook and cook, or I'll put on an audiobook and clean my room, do the laundry. If I am not feeling well, I will listen to an audiobook if I'm commuting somewhere. I also listen to audiobooks in the car. I don't know if I recommend that one as much, because obviously you need to focus on what you're doing and driving, and if you're not good at multitasking, that may not be the best option. But everything else, even if you're like planning a class or doing some homework that doesn't require you to put all your brain power in, then you can maybe listen to an audiobook meanwhile you're doing it. My 4th tip seems a little easy, but it is the most difficult out of these, I think, which is to prioritize time for reading. I personally like reading at night in my bed. Instead of checking my phone every now and then, I will set up a time. So for example, if I want to go to bed at 12, I will stop what I'm doing. If I'm watching a show or looking at my phone, I will stop doing it and start reading an hour before I want to actually fall asleep. If you like reading in the mornings, then make sure you have that time. Prioritize the time that you need in order to actually read. So it has been very important for me to cut down my screen time by actually prioritizing reading before bed, and that has also helped me fall asleep. I know a lot of people can't fall asleep while reading, because reading is an activity that requires you to think and process words, obviously, but again, it's better than looking at a screen. So I would recommend prioritize reading, especially since there are so many movies, so many TV shows that we have to make time for what we want to do. So if you want to read more, then maybe you need to stop watching so many shows or so many movies and maybe read instead. It's a balance of finding time for what you really want to do. And my 3rd tip I want to mention is that if you're not enjoying a book that you're reading, put it down. Just pick up another book and move on, right? Because if you're not enjoying a book, pushing through it may mean that you end up in a reading slump, or you end up not liking any other book because you were left with such a bitter taste in your mouth from reading that one book. So I would definitely recommend, maybe don't push through. Maybe if you gave it a good try, if you read 50 pages and you find that it's not the book for you, then it's not the book for you, and just read another book. There are so many other books in the world that you can enjoy and love. So why waste your time on books that you don't like? And then my 2nd tip I want to mention also goes along the lines of putting down a book, but it is to read more than one book at a time. It may sound counterproductive, because if you want to read more, then why would you read many books at the same time? You may not end up reading so much. But for me, since I am a mood reader, I tend to go or gravitate towards the book I am feeling like reading. So if I am feeling happy one day, then maybe I want to read a contemporary romance. And if I'm feeling kind of sad, maybe I want to read something more like literary fiction or like a dramatic graphic novel. Who knows? So what I would recommend is reading maybe 2 or 3 books at a time, just so that you have more options and that you're able to explore other things that you may like at the time that you're reading them. And my number 1 tip, which I think is the most important one, for me at least, is to explore other ways of reading. So in my case, I am a big Kindle reader. I like my Kindle. Why? Because it allows me to read in bed, and it's so comfortable to just lay down and read and not have to physically open the book. I love physical books, obviously. Like, I have my collection of physical books, and I do pick up a physical book, a Kindle book, and an audiobook at the same time. So I have the variety in terms of what I'm reading at the same time. But also, I tend to read faster when I'm reading in a Kindle, for many different reasons. The first one being that you don't necessarily see the number of pages of the book. Maybe you can see the percentage of where in the book you are in regards to your reading time, or maybe you can see how many hours or how many minutes you have left in the book or in the chapter. And so there are many different ways that you can read in a Kindle, and that makes it, for me, it makes it more accessible for people that may not like reading every day in like a physical format.
I think one of the things I forgot to mention in this video is that obviously not everybody has access to Kindles or books in general. So libraries are a very, very good option in case you wanted to access reading, but you don't necessarily want to spend money on it. Because obviously reading is still a very much elite activity in our society, and not everybody will have access to it. These are just like general tips that I could think of, but obviously there are exceptions, and libraries are a very good option.
And the second one that I find to be the most comfortable in terms of how to read is that it allows you to bring it everywhere. There are some books that are very chunky, especially the fantasy books or hardcover books, that you may not want to take with you everywhere because they're very heavy, and your poor back. So what I do is I bring my Kindle, and I have many different books that I can choose from just there waiting for me to read. And if I want to read at night and I want to turn off the light, I can read with a Kindle, and it's a lot better than reading on my phone or reading on an iPad, because it's designed for reading, obviously. And yeah, so those are my main tips that I wanted to mention. But I have one additional tip that is almost as important as every other tip that I've mentioned, which is to read something that you want to read. And it's very self-explanatory, but I know it's difficult for some people because they feel obligated to read books because of their literary worth, or because they feel like they have to read this book that everybody is talking about. So hyped books, classics, those are books that everyone says, hey, you need to read this. But what if you're not into that type of book? You may never find a book that you like if you don't explore things that you actually do enjoy. So if you know that you like movies or horror movies, then maybe try reading a horror book. If you like, rom-coms, then just read romance. And don't let anybody tell you that it's not valid to read a certain genre just because people may like shit on it. Trash reading is valid reading. I love reading what is called like trashy books, and I say trashy because they're not really trash. They're still literary works that have been published, that are out there, and if you like them, then who is anybody to say that you can't like them, right? You can like whatever you want. You can read whatever you want, but specifically, don't feel like you need to read a book. Just read the books you want to read. Read the things that you like. If you say, I don't like reading, period, then maybe it's because you haven't found the right book for you. And that's what we're here for. So if you need any recommendations, just let me know. And thank you for watching. I hope these tips are useful for any of you who are looking to read more and make some time for reading in your routine, in your everyday life. And I hope you are doing well. I hope you have an amazing week. Remember to drink water, to stay hydrated, and I will see you on my next video soon. Bye!